This is an attempt from Democrats to get a limited expansion of child tax credit benefits. If you remember back in President Biden's first months, he passed this really sweeping expansion. It was giving parents up to about $3,600 per child per year. And the main thing there was that there was no income requirement. You didn't have to show any kind of income or work in order to get those benefits. What they're looking at now is something that can get bipartisan support. It would be much more limited than that. The thing that they're dangling for Republicans is a renewal of a package of corporate tax breaks that Republicans and businesses need to get in there before the end of the year.
I'm just gonna sigh. I'm gonna call on Black Jesus right now. The fact that man fixed his mouth, as my grandmother would say, to say what he said. They're working on ways to get a bipartisan approach, and a bipartisan approach that would strip away opportunities for families to get a full child tax credit. That's the kind of bipartisanship you want. This is absolutely heartless and insane. It is. So what in the unholy hell is going on? Once again, they want to give tax breaks. They don't mind giving tax breaks to corporations, but when it comes time to give tax breaks to Big Mama and Big Papa, they got a problem with that. America, there's something wrong when everyday people, when the 98% in this 98% in this country got the grovel. And Lance, I think you said earlier in another one of our segments about the crumbs. They got the grovel for the crumbs, and these people giddy about this. This is enough to make me cuss. You know what? I'm not gonna do it. I am just not gonna do it. I'll do it after the show. Come see, we gotta start an after show so y'all can cuss up a storm, Lance. Maybe I can come on your show and then I can just cuss all I want to, because I'm feeling like that right now. Did you hear what that man just said?
It's ridiculous, because you can't have the Democrats spending all day saying how they cut child poverty in half because of a policy decision. And then if they reverse that policy decision, does that mean you have just doubled child poverty? Is that how that works? Because if poverty is a policy decision, which I think they've kind of proven that it is at this point, then you're choosing this. Then you're choosing to have more poor kids. You're choosing to have more starving families. There's going to be more families that have to choose. Do we choose healthcare for our kids or a meal? Which one is it going to be between those two? And it's a policy decision that's standing in the way. That's abhorrent then. I don't know how anyone can justify this as like helping everyday families.
They can't justify it, and the fact that they're gonna cave in to these interests, again, tells us everything that we need to know. So from the betrayal of the rail workers and now this, and your point about how you bragged about cutting childhood poverty in half, and then you catapult them right back into that. So when the child tax credit expired, the effects were immediate and harsh. Take a look at this. The monthly child poverty rate increased from 12.1% in December of 2021 to 17% in January of 2022, the highest rate since the end of 2020. The 4.9 percentage point, 41% increase in poverty represents 3.7 million more children in poverty due to the expiration of the monthly child tax credit payments. But you know why they don't give a damn? Because it's not their kid. As I often say on this show, their kid and their kids' kid and their kids' kids, unless they do something to bunk up in life, they gonna be all right. These people go to the same schools, they go to the same dinners, the same caviar parties, and they do not give a damn about the kids in the hoods where they misunderstood. The rural hoods, suburban hoods, and urban hoods. They don't care, because if they cared, they would have never allowed the child tax credit to expire in the first place in the midst of a pandemic. Now, some folks may be done with the pandemic, but the pandemic is not done with us, and the ripple effects of that pandemic is definitely not over. So you got a compounding impact here for people who were already suffering before the pandemic, and now they get to suffer even more. Lance, I'm fit to be tired over this, and these are the kinds of stories we cover on Unbossed, because we want people to have some emotion behind this. You just can't sit back. You know, Lance, I had a boss who used to say, if your hair is on fire, act like your hair is on fire. I mean, envision. I mean, not that I want either of our hairs to be on fire, but if the hair on our head was literally on fire right now, we wouldn't be sitting here cool, calm, and collected. We'd be running all around the room, and everybody named mama and their mama's mama would know that our hair is on fire. Well, my hair is on fire over this.
And what were you talking about before when you were talking about how the military expenditure just increased to what, over $800 billion with a B, $800 billion? There's never a discussion, how are we gonna pay for it when it comes to the military industrial complex, the military spending? It's like almost 10 times all the other other countries combined. But then when it comes to something like this, and I know there's a difference between discretionary spending and this, but like, how could you let this expire and at the same time pretend to care about children and families when the data you just showed 3.8 million, almost 4 million kids by policy decision entered poverty? Like, you chose to enter 4 million children into poverty. Like that should be abhorrent in the richest country in the world, no less, the richest country in the world.
That's it. The hegemonic nation known as the United States of America. And the point that you made, Lance, about this being a policy decision, can we just rest right there for a minute? Because I want the people who are listening and watching us to understand that policies are created on purpose. And so if a policy is created, it can be recreated, it can be changed. This is not immutable. This does not have to be forever. They have made a decision to do the stuff that they are doing right now. And them pulling kids out of poverty and then catapulting them back into poverty and making it dependent on tax breaks for corporations, absolutely insane. Let's put up this headline, shall we? Hell, I'm getting just as excited as I was about the science story here. Child tax credit improvements must come before corporate tax breaks. To sustain recent reductions in child poverty, Congress should prioritize improvements to the child tax credit over corporate tax breaks in year-end tax negotiation. Thank you, Center for American Progress. That seems common. But my maternal grandmother used to say common sense ain't common. Why do we got to explain this to these people? They already know it, but guess what? They don't care. This is real. Now, we're not making this up. Go ahead and follow the yellow brick road. We're not making this up. So let's put this up. 91% of low-income families use their monthly CTC payments to cover the cost of basic necessities to ensure that their children had healthier, more stable environments. So when you factor in inflation, it's the impoverished who are being affected the most. And who is causing it? You guessed it, corporate greed. Let's put this up from Public Citizen. Corporate profits hit record high in third quarter amid 40-year high inflation. The next, inflation boosts US household spending by $433 a month on average, booty fine. So let's put up this tweet from former Labor Secretary, Dr. Robert Reich, for some more perspective, shall we? The House just passed an atrocious $858 billion in annual defense spending. That is $45 billion more than Biden even asked for. Healthcare, we can't afford it. Child tax credit, too expensive. Defense spending, here, I just found an extra $45 billion laying around. Jesus, Mary and Joseph. Go ahead and lay that down, Dr. Robert Reich. And to quote the urban poet Tupac, they got money for war, but they can't feed the poor. I'm so over this. And now they want to put work requirements. But it's not just the GOP, it's that damn Joe Manchin added again, the shadow president. And he's adding another layer of BS to this. Let's put this up. The CTC enhancement, which brought about historic reductions in US child poverty, expired at the end of last year due to the opposition of Republicans. And you guessed it, the shadow president of the United States himself, Senator Joe Manchin, who refused to support a renewal of expanded child tax credit unless a quote firm work requirement was added. Ain't this some sugar? Ain't it? They ain't got no work requirements for these corporate folks, but they want to make work requirements for poor folks. I got it. Y'all got it? I hope y'all tracking this. Furthermore, whereas the 2021 version boosted payments across the board, for example, this time, the focus is more on expanding the percentage of recipients who qualify for the current $2,000 yearly maximum, according to those involved in the process. The parents of roughly 19 million children don't receive the full amount as of now, either because they earn too little or aren't working at all. You know what? Just throw my damn papers in the air. I'm just done. Lance, I can't take it.
And you know what's really sick is like CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, do they report on this? Do they talk about this? Or is it always just like, hey, here's a really scary story about this brown man who stole a whole bunch of diapers and baby formula. Be really scared at 6 o'clock on the TV tonight. But it's not like these are actual policies by the people you've elected that is increasing child poverty by the millions by policy. But no, don't think about that. Don't just, really scary. Look how scary it is. This is scary, right? Look, the baby formula, diapers, they're gonna come for you too. They're stealing from the balls and all this kind of stuff. And like, this is the stories that they should be reporting on. This is what is directly going to impact their lives. But instead they're scared about things that aren't real.
There it is. And you know, one of the most quotable people, men to walk the face of the earth, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., he talked about how they have socialism for the rich and rugged individualism for the poor. And if this is not a very precise example of that in real time, like happening right now, I don't know what is. You know what, Lance, I wonder, you know, J. Edgar Hoover, who was one of the worst people, who used his power as being the director of the FBI to do counter intelligence and preying on folks, especially black people during the civil rights movement. The worst. They need to change that damn building, but that's another story for another time. But he was known for having a file on people. You probably heard this, Lance, where he had this little file on folks. So when they jumped out of line, he would pull out all the dirt he had on them to make them bend to his will. I wonder. Inquiring minds want to know whether or not Manchin, Joe Manchin, the shadow president of the United States of America, he must have a Hoover file somewhere. Because whatever this man has wanted since President Biden has been in office, he's giving it to him. This man gets invited to the White House instead of the president of the United States of America gassing up the jet and going to West Virginia and putting it all on the line. Because the last time I checked, there are poor people in West Virginia. There are poor people in every state. There are poor people on the right, poor people on the left, poor people in the middle. But they don't give a damn when it comes to these poor people. Lance, I'm over it right now. I am very much over it. I want the American people to be over it too. Now, we tired of the flim flam.